Hello and welcome to this important video on Tesla tariffs and the impact the new Trump automotive tariffs will have on Tesla. I also want to give you a very quick overview over other tariff questions. Now, very recently, President Trump announced that we will have a 25% tariff on all auto imports into the United States. Now, this is a pretty important development because most cars, or a lot of cars that are sold in the United States, are being manufactured abroad. 25% tariff is huge because it ramps up the cost of these cars for the people who import them by 25%. For example, a Ford Mach-E that is being sold for $40,000 suddenly costs $10,000 more for the people who import it. And in theory, they have to pass on that cost to the consumer or eat it in tremendous losses on margin. And the margin is already negative on these. So what are they going to do if they ramp up the price by 10,000? They will not sell a single car anymore. Hey, creating these videos is a lot of work. Please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Now let's get back to the video. The question is, what impact do these tariffs have on Tesla? That's what we are mostly interested in here. And then look at the competition. Now, if we do that, if you do a quick search on X, that's what I'm going to look at here, you see there's a lot of posting going on Tesla tariffs. There are some very interesting statistics. So first of all, here we see where America's cars actually come from. You see of all the imports, China is actually not that bad because China already has a bunch of tariffs on them. And mostly they come from Mexico because Mexico manufactures a lot of cars for the United States. So that's an interesting little bit here. What we also see here, this is a very interesting chart. What you also see is when you look at US sales for each OEM by origin of production, Tesla Motors, 100% of all Teslas sold in the United States are manufactured in the United States. That is absolutely unrivaled, with the exception of Rivian and Lucid, who are totally tiny, other EV startups, and Isuzu, which is just completely irrelevant. But when you see even Ford, and where's General Motors down here, the famous American automakers, Ford and General Motors nearly has 50% of cars manufactured abroad. So they will get destroyed by these tariffs. It's going to be very bad for GM. And GM is already in a bad situation. Stellantis, very similar. Also a lot of foreign-built cars, mostly in Canada and Mexico. And then, of course, for Ford, you see it's roughly 80% manufactured here in the United States, but 20% abroad. So these cars will get hit very, very badly. Now, in general, that is, of course, good news for those who are not affected. Imagine you have competition. You have the Mach-E, you have the Hyundai Ioniq 6, I think, is manufactured in Mexico. So a bunch of, follow-up, EVs that are competing with Tesla, and now they're out of the race. These people will get screwed. They cannot compete anymore. So that's going to boost Tesla, of course. Here's another nice overview. Tesla, 100% US. By the way, if there's retaliation by other countries, that doesn't matter too much because Tesla also has a very important plant in Berlin, Germany for the European market, and of course, a super big one in China because Elon is smart. So it's a distributed manufacturing, a localized distributed manufacturing infrastructure Tesla has. And here's a very important Gene Munster update where he summarizes the bottom line very nicely. So what we see is that Gene Munster, very smart analyst here, says that roughly 45% of all cars sold in the United States are manufactured outside the country, right? That means the selling price, 45% of all cars in the United States is going to go up significantly. And the average selling cars for all non-Tesla vehicles in the US would rise by roughly 7% because it's only, half of the cars. Gene also says he estimates the impact on Tesla costs are roughly 2% or prices because some parts that Tesla imports are subject to the tariffs, but compared to the other guys, this is more marginal. And that would mean that Tesla would effectively appear 5% cheaper relative to the rest of the market. And I think what he didn't factor in is 45% of cars sold in the US are manufactured outside the country. But this calculation that there is significant taxes or tariffs now on parts, that also applies to the other 55% of cars. So I don't even think that Gene is right with that differential here, but basically he's saying Tesla is becoming comparatively cheaper to others, and he sees the bottom line increase that Tesla should sell an additional 20 to 25,000 vehicles over the next 12 months. Well, I think it's going to be a little more extreme because that's a very theoretic math here where he says, well, if the other cars get that much more expensive, 7%, and Tesla would get only 2% more, Tesla becomes 5% cheaper, and he runs the analysis on that. That is not how it works. Because if you have key competitors like the Mach-E, they're not going to get 5% more expensive. They are going to not be available anymore because Ford has to pull them off the market. They can't manufacture them anymore. Same for Hyundai, for the models, for the EVs that they manufacture outside the United States. So I think the impact will be significantly bigger. I think it's going to be very good for Tesla. And, one very important proof of that is that Elon says, important note that Tesla is not unscathed here. The tariff impact on Tesla is still significant. Why would Elon say that? Because Tesla is winning big. And Elon is a little scared that this comes across as a favor that Trump did for him, which it wasn't. But of course, Elon wants to preempt and it's like, listen, I'm getting hurt very badly. Of course, that's completely not true. So I think the fact that Elon tries to downplay this, like, no, believe me, we are also getting hurt, tells you how positive that is. And I think that's also part why the Tesla stock is up over the last couple of days so much, because the market understands that the market is not that dumb. And they understand that Tesla is a big winner of that tariff situation. Now, there's also the new tariffs reciprocity strategy of Trump coming up April 2nd, where Trump will impose reciprocity on all tariffs for all goods for the United States, which means if you charge 250% on milk from the United States imported to Canada, something like that, then the US will now also impose 250% on your milk, which seems fair to me. And so I will make another video next week on that to explain why this reciprocity strategy of Trump will actually lead to a global reduction in tariffs and a global increase in trade. So the trade barriers are forced down with a reciprocity approach. We see that in India already, that India is pulling some tariffs down dramatically from 110% to 10%. Because if you have huge tariffs on US goods, you don't want to keep them up that high, because now April 2nd, you will get slapped on with the equivalent of tariffs if you export to the United States. And of course, no one wants that. Hey, if you want to stay ahead of capital markets and the next Tesla moves, join us in Pioneerlands. Here we track Tesla, capital opportunities, AGI disruption, and politics. It's your critical information advantage in the age of AGI. It's free and the link is in the description. Let's get back to the video. So in total, the big picture is Tesla is not affected by these automotive tariffs in a negative way. They're affected in a very positive way. If there's retaliation, this retaliation will very likely also be in Tesla's favor for a very simple reason. Because Tesla has the most intelligent and the best, globally the best, distributed, regionally distributed, decentralized manufacturing strategy. China, Europe, US. Different from other automakers who tend to do that for specific vehicle types. That one is manufactured in Mexico, one in India, one in the US. But for Tesla, the distribution of manufacturing is more or less even. So each site manufactures Model 3 and Model Y because they only have two models. So it's a true distributed manufacturing strategy. And things like Cybertruck don't really matter because they're sideshows. So that is one big takeaway. And the second big takeaway, I always appeal to everyone, put on your big boy hat and see the big picture. The Trump administration, the Commerce Secretary, the Treasury Secretary, the people in charge of trade. Trump has assembled probably the smartest, highest IQ, highest capable administration in the history of the United States. These people are fully aligned. They think America needs to be strong and big, and companies in America need to benefit from that. And of course, Elon sits in the middle of that. So I'm not saying there's collusion, but you can be guaranteed they are not going to hurt each other. Elon doesn't have a direct say in these things, obviously, but he has an indirect presence in the administration. So the idea that the Trump administration is going to do things that strategically hurt Tesla is very stupid. And the idea that they are doing things and Tesla's adapting to that with foresight over multiple years now, that will be heavily beneficial for Tesla strategically and policy-wise, that is the right idea to have. Very simple. It's called big picture. That's going to happen. And that is why it's so important that Elon sits in the middle of DC right now. So overall, another very bullish situation. I hope that was helpful and hope to see you soon.